course, the hatred started even at his birth. And so by the time he started his ministry, they had 30 years of developing this attitude. This
Herod, right?
attitude. Well, that was at his birth.
Yeah, so at his birth, Herod
Tried to kill him. Yeah.
tried to kill him. Yeah, but he killed all of them.
And of course, the thing that really comes into focus is that supernatural conflict between, good and evil, light and darkness, between Christ and Satan, etc., comes into great focus. And so Jesus is not only dealing with all of the normal things that are corrupt in our societies, but then he's dealing with the supernatural aspect of things. And so in Desire of Ages, the curtain is kind of drawn back a little bit, and so you see a lot more of that playing out. But the thing that's so fantastic is that despite all of the antagonism against him, he was laser focused on the mission. Laser focused on the mission. You could categorize that in two aspects. A revelation of the will of God to humanity, and also a restoration of that same character in humanity. And so to reveal and to restore. And he was so laser focused on that. Nothing seemed to distract. Nothing seemed to really distract him, despite all of the arrows that Satan was hurling at him, and all the crazy stuff that as he interacted with people that they brought up. I recently read I think it was the last chapter, where the Samaritans were kind of antagonistic against the Jews. Now, there were a few in Samaria, and of course Jesus took his disciples there intentionally and on purpose, just to meet the woman at the well, the Syrophoenician woman at the well, because he knew that even the disciples had a negative attitude towards the Samaritans. And that's easy for us to do today, right? It's easy for us to look at a class of people or a culture of people and say, oh, they are so different from us,
it's also such a way. There's so many reasons why. I think that's like also the reason why he chose like the Phoenician woman at the well and stuff to give the message, because it's giving a good message through people that it's basically showing them that these are all God's people. Like the Phoenician woman is no less of God's child than basically than Jews are, or any Greek or whatever.
One of the hurdles that you find when you read the books that Paul wrote, one of the hurdles that he was constantly having to hurdle over, was that the gospel was for the Jews. We are the chosen people. We're the chosen of God. We are Abraham's seed. And Jesus is like, hey, you guys don't get it. I came to save the world. I came to save the world.
That's the argument of today also. That's one of the arguments of today also. The gospel was for just the Jews.
Yes. Yeah. And
and people, just think one of the greater questions that I've heard some people ask is, just the idea of like whether God enjoined the Gentiles, let's say, to the body of Christ, or whether or not he just made a whole new body, in terms of doing away with everything that once was, because the bride has been the same since the beginning. And it's
which was always categorized just as the church.
Right. Which
like the Jews were just like the people who were in the church.
But before there were Jews, what did you call it? Like they were just
Abraham's
something else.
Yeah, well, that's the why. What's it called? Well, people back then.
Of the one true God.
Yeah, followers of the one true God. That's the simplest way of putting it.
Who was the one who mentioned who was the one in the Bible that basically mentioned I believe the God of Abraham? Because that's what they listed a lot.
That's what the Jews.
Okay, yeah. So then basically they were esteeming themselves almost like the church of Abraham of sort, not like of Abraham, but like,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like,
They're
right?
just saying we follow that lineation of
Yeah.
thinking and that theology.
Because obviously Abraham was known enough to be like, oh, he has this peculiar God and stuff. That
Well, there's always been that one true God all through time, even the Adamic, what I would call the
Right.
Adamic dispensation from Adam to Noah. That's
Well,
your first 2,000 years.
Yeah.
Well, and you had people like Melchizedek, who was a priest of God, and you're like, well, that just kind of pops up out of nowhere, and this
Yeah.
is when Abraham was just getting started. So it's
Sure.
like there was obviously a church
Obviously, yeah.
throughout time
Yeah.
that was there.
The principles of God's law are all found recorded in scripture before we get to Mount Sinai, before he actually writes them down. And of course, he's writing them down on tables of stone, not only to show the eternality of them, but because the called out people, this born again nation, had been in bondage in Egypt for hundreds of years. So he wants them to have a
concrete-
documented.
Well, they also
documented.
were constantly asking for things, right, to be like other nations. They were like, give us a king, give us this, you know, give us these other things to rule over us and give us like a nation. And God was like, you don't want those things because all those things come with, you know, slavery and all these other issues and problems. Like, you know, if you just follow me, how much better your nation would be.
Okay, so let me kind of get back to where I was going with this. Jesus, at a certain point, at an appointed time, knew that he had to go to Jerusalem. Okay. And he went up to Jerusalem on the Feast of Tabernacles at one point, but he went up covertly. He went up secretly. Okay. And he ended up
premise.
he ended up he knew that if he had gone in there
God shows up
with
to
a
his
lot
own
of
party in secret.
with a lot of fanfare, that they would have grabbed him then, and that wasn't the right time. So he's up there in Jerusalem, Feast of Tabernacles, and he does his ministry up there, preaches in the temple and whatnot, and then he ends up leaving. In fact, they confronted him, and they were going to try to grab him then, because he was basically told them that he was the Messiah, and they were going to stone him. And so the Bible just says, you know, he just exited. He just went through the crowd, and nobody you know touched him or whatever. And of course, God's angels were protecting him. There's no doubt. But then he leaves. But then there's a certain time when he's going to come back to Jerusalem, and this time he's going to say he's going to go back with a lot of fanfare. He's going to go back. He's going to announce his intention to go to Jerusalem. He's going to instruct people to go and let everybody up there know that I'm coming, so to speak. But he has to, along the way, he has to stop in Samaria. He wants to stop in Samaria and rest for the night on the way. And when they go to make arrangements for that, the people in Samaria say, no thanks, we're not interested, we don't want him here. Tell him to go somewhere else. And
What a terrible thing to do to themselves.
right, of course, there's the whole chapter on this, right? And the disciples that are with him, Peter, James, and John, they say, we are outraged, you know, for him to treat our master that way. Let us call fire down from heaven and let's devour them, you know, that kind of thing. And Jesus was like, what? What are you talking about? You know, don't think like that. You know, even though they were rude to us and they didn't want us there. No, just because we were rejected, we don't want them destroyed, right? We want them saved, right? And so, you know, we can also develop a similar type of, I mean, listen, when I think of the Clintons and the Obamas and all the nastiness that they've caused, the millions and millions of lives that they've adversely affected. You know, I mean, Haiti's a basket case right now. That's all the Clintons' fault. Okay, I'll tell you right up front. They're a basket case. The president had to take off. They have just gangs running around. I mean, there's all kinds of violence going on there now. Clintons did that. All right. And then with their child trafficking and all the nonsense that they were involved with that, it's just despicable. And yeah, I would say, Lord, you know, take them out of the equation so humanity can have better opportunities. But Jesus would say, I died for them, gave my life for them, and as long as they have breath in them, there might be an opportunity for them to repent. And maybe, just maybe, God might be calling you to approach him in that regard. You just never know. Okay. how God opens up the doors. Well, let me just share with you. At the end of this little chapter here, it says, the contemplation of the love of God manifested in his Son will stir the heart and arouse the powers of the soul as nothing else can do. Again, Jesus came to reveal and to restore. He was so focused on those things. I'll read the beginning of this little chapter here. It says, in all ages, philosophers and teachers have been presenting to the world theories by which to satisfy the soul's need. And that's the temporal need. That's not the spiritual need, right? Every heathen nation has had its great teachers and religious systems offering some other means of redemption than Christ. You know, we want salvation, but we don't want to go through that door. We want to go up, climb up another way and go through another door. And Jesus, of course, was very clear. He is the door, right?
The way and the truth.
Right. Some other means of other than Christ, turning the eyes of men away from the Father's face and filling their hearts with fear of him who has given them only blessing. You know, Jesus said, the same sun that falls on the just also falls on the unjust, right?
The same rate.
Whether people realize it or not, whether they understand that there is a God in heaven, they are receiving the benefit, the blessing.
Do you think that's
from
also
the
kind of an analogy? Because right, is that actually the wording is said too? The same sun that falls on the just is falling on the unjust.
unjust, right?
Something like, I think, well, that or
'Cause it-
rain or
I
something.
mean, it makes me
Yeah,
think of
so-
like how you would say like, you know, somebody who falls in battle or somebody who falls, like I think who's died, like the same son who died for the just died for the unjust.
Yeah, and it is
I think-
rain.
Yeah, it's mentioned in multiple different
Yeah.
scenarios. You know, the same, I think in Ecclesiastes is where he kind of talks about how death is the great equalizer and all
Yep.
this other stuff. That's basically like, doesn't matter what you build and what you do. I'm building this massive empire and all these temples, and I'm going to die and leave it to someone more foolish and less wise than me. Like, it's all just, what are we doing here? You know?
Okay, so all through time we've had, whether in the Adamic dispensation, the Jewish dispensation, or the Christian dispensation, we've always had a whole host of philosophers and false teachers presenting their worldly theories and schemes, all in an effort to rob God of that which is his own. Rob both by creation and by redemption. These false teachers rob men as well, or man as well. Millions of human beings are bound down under false religions in the bondage of slavish fear, of solid indifference, toiling like beasts of burden, benefit of hope or joy or aspirations
Breath.
here. Breath, that's right, of hope and joy, what did I say, or aspirations here. And with only a dull fear of the hereafter. And then, of course, this sentence that I read earlier, it is the gospel of the grace of God alone that can uplift the soul. The contemplation of the love of God manifested in his Son will stir the heart and arouse the powers of the soul as nothing else can. And, you know, that's part of our mission, is to lift up Christ so that they may see the loveliness of Jesus. But that loveliness only comes through if we show that love. And so this is why Jesus was able to stay laser focused. He was love. He was light. He was a blessing to humanity. And he calls for us to develop a character, a similar character, that as that's reflected in the darkness, it has an impact like nothing else that we can do. We can, we're not, of course, called to convert anybody. Well, we can't. It's just impossible.
We're
for
called
us
to be seed sowers.
Right, to throw the seed and allow the Holy Spirit to do his work.
I mean, you're given, I guess a star for souls that you helped influence, I suppose.
Well,
Whether you get a star or not.
yeah, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. That should never be the motivation for.
Well, it's not the motivation is not having the stars. The motivation is to get as many stars as possible because the people are more valuable than the crown would be.
Well, the motivation is to follow the pattern that Christ laid down to reveal and to restore.
Yeah.
So the more that you
You know who's
emulate,
going to have the most stars? Sun.
Of course.
Jesus.
He'll have them all. He'll have all stars. And that's what he deserves anyway.
I've always felt
Okay.
that it's kind of a mistaken thing where people
Premise.
think that they're going to get a star for each person that they've helped, into the kingdom.
In their crown, yeah.
But it's always a chain reaction. We've sown a seed here, someone else has sown a seed, a pastor has spoken,
Absolutely.
a
Yeah.
friend, it's been a chain reaction. There's it's very seldom one person.
Yeah, I wonder if that was metaphoric
Last person
instead of
gets
literal.
credit for the kill.
Yeah. You get an
Maybe
assist.
for those
Mrs.
people who are
Dolphin.
motivated by rewards.
Okay. All right, so
Points of
we're
distance.
continuing on.
The whole
We
chapter.
talked last week about just jumping into Exodus, and we may decide after a couple of chapters of this to go somewhere else. Rose says that she'd like to study the book of Isaiah, which is fine with me too.
Sure.
But for right
Do you
now,
have any interest in studying different topics?
yeah,
May I
we can
make
throw it out there.
One final comment on the previous topic.
Sure.
Yeah, speaking of the well and the bride of Christ, and we know that even Abraham's son Isaac, Abraham sent his servant to find a bride for Isaac, and he met Rebekah at the well. Moses met his future wife at the well. Jesus met the woman at the well, who was a Gentile who became a believer, and
They're a Phoenician woman. Mhm.
she's also the bride of Christ. And we're the bride of Christ. Those have been baptized in the water. So there's that bride of Christ and that bride and the water connection that it kind of permeates the scripture from front to back.
That she's been washed.
It's been
Yeah.
washed by, yes.
And the water, and she's drunk the water of life, right?
Yeah,
That's
the
what she's
water-
drinking in life.
living water.
Living
Yes.
water.
But it is interesting that there's that bride connection between the well and the person, the bride of Christ and the man and the woman, and that
Right.
marriage, that points towards that future marriage supper of the Lamb.
Nice.
I want to add that little comment.
Absolutely.
I think too, we were talking earlier about, what to call the true believers before there were Israelites. Jesus said it I think it was in Revelation, my sheep are those that hear my voice and follow me.
We should call it the sheep.
Yeah.
Well, Israel means to overcome, right?
Yes.
Overcome.
So realistically, I guess the
So-
name that God chose for his people
Overcomers.
are overcomers. Yeah. At its base root.
Okay, so if no one else has anything else,
Repentant sinners.
we've come to the end of Genesis, of course, and as we move into Exodus, basically Joseph has died, being 110, and they embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt. And of course, as I mentioned last week, the bones are not in that coffin, even though that coffin is sitting in Saqqara, the museum at Saqqara. It is empty. And it's empty because Israel would leave Egypt, as we're going to discover as we get into Exodus. Exodus means to, basically depart,
To journey.
the journey to leave. Okay, so as far as the timing, I think we're looking at about 50 years down the road, as after the death of Joseph, as we start
The 50-year jump.
this first chapter here, because at least 50 years down the road.
Because all of Joseph's brothers had died, for all of that generation to pass away.
Right.
You're talking about a good chunk of time there.
Yeah, they all would have been a little bit older.
Yeah. So now these are the names of the children of Israel, which came into Egypt. Every man and his household came with Jacob. And that would be the sons, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. And then, of course, Joseph was already there. And all the souls that came out of the loins of Jacob were 70 souls, for Joseph was in Egypt already. Joseph died, and all his brethren and all that generation. Children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly, multiplied and waxed exceedingly mighty, and the land was filled with them. So, God, again, the whole last 12 chapters of Genesis is really all about God getting them to a place where they can develop into a mighty nation. And of course, that's coming to pass even 5 decades or so after Joseph's even gone. Now there arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph. And it's not that he didn't know about Joseph. Anybody that was in the process of becoming, the Pharaoh just didn't come from another country and all of a sudden become Pharaoh. He grew up.
Yeah, I'm sure he would have heard stories. He would have been like,
Well, he experienced a lot of the benefit
Yeah.
from Joseph, right? His family. So
Well, if I'm not mistaken, there is a theory around this happening that it actually is another ruling faction, like basically another tribe that comes in and takes over this position. And I think it might have been the Exodus thing that guy had put together. I forgot his name, but you know what I'm talking about.
Kind of the timeline?
Patterns of the Exodus.
Right.
I think he talks about this either in the second one or in the first one, but the theory is that when it says that a Pharaoh arose that knew not Joseph, that it was actually like another tribe that had come in and taken power at this point. And so they were kind of.
Well, that may have been
Most of the
the
idea.
case, but when it talks about him, which knew not Joseph, it's referring more to the fact that Israel remains separate from the Egyptian culture,
Right.
and this new Pharaoh, who may have been from another tribe or whatever. Not, in other words, he did not believe in the beliefs that Joseph was promoting. He didn't believe in the one true God, etc., that Joseph promoted.
Right.
If you read in Desire of Ages, not Desire, if you read in Patriarchs and Prophets, she says there that he was aware of the things that Joseph had done, and that
Not sure, 'cause he would have been standing in the middle of all his architecture and.
well, but not only that, of preserving and saving the nation. He just didn't want to give the credit to the one true God because he had other gods, etc. And so he convinces his council. He said unto his people, behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. And so he uses this rationale. He creates, this is the fear porn, right? This is creating the fear that somehow, if let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply, and it come to pass that when there falleth out any war, they join also unto our enemies and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land. And you got to remember, when you come in as a new regime, right, we'll call it that, and you look over and say, wow, those people have the best land in all of Egypt. They have our best property over there, and look what it's done for them. They're exceedingly abundant and multiply, exceedingly mighty. Wow! If we could take back that property, man, just imagine how it would benefit our kingdom, right? Our regime. So a lot of that was playing into it. There was jealousy.
Who are these foreigners?
Yeah, these were the foreigners that came in. Now they're
Well,
just
there's gonna be an
reaping all the.
entitlement. I mean, it's like America. If you had a bunch of
You got it.
people taking
Sure.
over your land, people are going to start to worry.
Yeah.
I guess for an example, if you had
Yeah. I mean, look at all the millions that are coming across our borders now in the last 2 years. Do we just want to say, our land is a rich land, a fertile land. It's productive. Do we want to just turn it over to a bunch of people come from anywhere? I don't think that we do. But anyway, this particular Pharaoh is well aware of how God blessed Joseph and whatnot, and now he's trying to say, we need to be afraid of these people. Therefore, they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens.
put them into slavery.
And they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses.
It's pretty
And,
interesting to consider what that process must have looked like for them to even be able to do that. To go to this bigger nation and start subjugating them and getting them
Well,
to
Here's
like impose taxes, or I mean, what's the
here's the thing. What the new Pharaoh could see was that, well, just like Joseph was kind of God's special envoy there, these people are talented. These Hebrews are talented, skilled people. I need them to develop the infrastructure of our country,
right?
but we don't want them to
Take
have
over the infrastructure.
Yeah, we don't want them taking over or warring against us. So we need to kind of put our thumb on them. We need to kind of corral them. We need to subdue them.
Right.
But I think Elijah's asking more or less, if the nation's so mighty, what does the process look like to actually even do that, to like subdue a nation, right? It's like if
It must have been, well, the reason I even bring it out is because I'm speculating that it was a very steady and slow process.
Yeah,
just
that's what I
as
imagine it
this
was too.
nation. You just slowly erode aspects of freedom and keep trading your freedom for security, until eventually you're just in those bondage and you hardly remember. what it was
It's the
like.
frog in the
Well, we take a one little step back. When Joseph was alive, remember he had the Egyptian people
They also
actually sold themselves into slavery
Right.
to the Pharaoh. Okay. And what Joseph did to prevent what Joseph developed to prevent them from being a slave nation, right? And to have the leadership there pretty much come to an incorrect conclusion that everybody was there working for them instead of them being there to just lead the people. He implemented just a 20% tax. In other words, he said, you all can keep your property, and we'll just have a 20% tax.
Mhm.
Okay, all of that process that Joseph set up did not apply
To Israel.
to the Israelites.
Right.
Okay, so that's another reason why the new Pharaoh came along and said, hey, they're not,
Look at all the tax revenue we're missing out.
yeah, they're not paying their fair share, right?
Mhm.
So I think
I
there's some-
imagine that's what it means by afflicted, right? Kind of giving them
Yeah,
something to
well, they started to implement taxes on them. They started to put taskmasters over them to kind of try to control and make things difficult. They wanted to make things difficult, right?
I'm sure they also came to them being like, well, look, we need money for our city. We need money for
Makes sense.
our roads, our things to make your infrastructure better. And
So what was the purpose? What was the purpose of trying to subdue them?
keep control over the nation.
Okay, and how do you keep control? You
On the
have
ball.
Take away
the
the
best.
guns.
Well, take away the guns. You have less people, right? So they're trying to call the population growth, right?
Right.
So what they do is it says here in verse 12, but the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew,
Mhm.
right? So they're trying to curb, to call the population development. They don't want to be,
Engulfed,
totally
yeah.
overrun. They're trying to take preemptive steps.
Well, because if you have more Israelites than you have Egyptians, it's no longer Egypt, it's Israel,
Sure.
right? I mean, I see what they're saying, what they're thinking and whatnot.
Right. Okay, so they were grieved because of the children of Israel. They were afraid, and then they were causing Israel to be fearful as well. The Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve with rigor. In other words, hey, you guys got a 6-hour workday? Nah, I think we're going to jump that up to 10-hour workday. Right? And we've been supplying all this stuff for you to use. I think you're just going to have to go find some other suppliers, develop your own materials and sources.
They were trying to get the Israelites to move out of the country, to leave.
Yes. Make it
Too unpleasant.
too unpleasant to stick around long term. Yeah, to at least start the process for them thinking, hey,
Well,
we
also,
can-
see, he could have also been thinking about the same thing that Joseph did to the Egyptians and being like, let's do that to the Jewish people, where we can eventually get them to sell themselves into slavery so they can just live their life.
Sure.
You know, Joseph obviously was a very wise businessman,
Yeah.
made an
So,
investment in an entire nation.
so they made their lives bitter. They made their lives bitter, right? With hard bondage in mortar and in brick
So, I
and in
mean,
all manner of service in the field.
so that means in
All-
terms of the trades, being a brick mason is definitely the worst route you could go.
Well, no, that was a popular, because of the, you know, you don't have a lot of trees around in that area. So
Yeah, so you're mining.
you're not
you're-
necessarily a carpenter, but you're a brick mason for
Right.
a building. And you develop your skills in building. And it's a nice job, and it can be a very physical job, but it can become incredible hardship if you have to go and try to develop your own materials, your own resources.
If the
So-
manufacturing.
Well, I mean, imagine if, you know, someone's contracting you to go do a construction job and they say, I want a house built
But you're gonna have to
in
mill all
2
the
months.
2x4s.
Yeah, you gotta go build
Right.
it for you, have to go put the stone
You
through
got the
the
idea.
floor.
The idea. Yeah.
What an impossible task to have.
And so they're making it hard for them, right? In their employment and in their agriculture, all their service, wherein they made them serve was with rigor. Okay. And if you look up that word, look up the word rigor there to give you a better understanding. We get our word, you know, rigorous, right?
Right. It's the word pedek,
Yeah.
and it means harshness, severity, cruelty.
Yeah, so you get the picture there. Okay, we'll say now, again, the idea that the main reason for all this is to try to cull the population growth. And so they eventually see that it's really not working the way they thought it would
In
work.
fact, it's ramping things up.
In fact, it seems like it's even working in the opposite direction. So the king of Egypt
Thought they were.
spake unto the Hebrew midwives, of which the name of the one was Sifra, and the name of the other Puah. Okay. And he said, when you do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women and see them upon the stools, if it be a son, then you should kill him. But if it be a daughter, then she shall live. So he tells the midwives there, when these women start to give birth, if you can tell it's a male child. Good thing they didn't have sonograms back then, right? If you
Yeah.
tell, it's a male child, just kill it and let the girls live. But the midwives feared God and did not as the king of Egypt commanded them.
I'm wondering if these aren't like just like the heads of the midwives, because it seems a little odd to assume there were only 2 midwives and all.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, I agree. This is like these are
the directors of the
these are-
hospital kind of thing.
Yeah, I think so. I think these are the directors, and maybe one takes one part of the country, another takes another part of the. Yeah, well, I don't think it was just two people.
Look. Lucky what the midwives union.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's interesting too, just that like, you know, that a king could ask such a thing because it's, I mean, it's just so barbaric to think that you could be a professional who delivers children and also, you know, be told to do such a thing.
Yeah,
China.
Right.
I mean,
China literally has a rule where like you can only have
Well,
one
they
kid,
have-
so
they have-
well,
yeah.
they had.
well now their population's dying, so now
I
they're
think
like,
now
okay,
you
have
can
more
have,
kids.
I think now you can have 2.
You have like 4 now, I think. I think they upped it because they're losing population so fast.
Okay.
Well, also they
Because
not
they-
the rabbit trail too far. They developed also like sex dolls, so the men did not want women, so they were.
That's Japan. That's not-
Oh, it's Japan. Okay.
Yeah, that's good. All right. So anyway, we don't want to go down that rabbit hole too far, but
Population control whenever we're involved is always a problem.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So the midwives and their teams or whatever decided that they weren't going to kill off the men children, but to let them live. And so the king of Egypt called for the midwives and said unto them, why have ye done this thing and have saved the men children alive? I mean, it's like you said, that sounds so barbaric, right?
Right, to just take these people.
And he's asking the Hebrew women, the
Right,
Hebrew midwives to do this. I mean, to me, that seems even more preposterous.
right, to ask them to betray their own people.
Right, of course.
So
the
to
mid-
command them, not even to ask, just to.
Right. So the midwife said unto Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are not as the Egyptian women. Well, wow, that probably went over pretty big, right? For they are lively and are delivered ere the midwives come in unto them. So they're like, man, they just pop them out of
You
there
know-
quick. Before we even get there, the baby's already there.
What also makes me think
So,
of,
I mean, this is kind of what Pharaoh is suggesting here is a means of abortion.
well, that's what I was just now thinking along the same vein too, is that
infanticide.
well, so this is abortion by force, whereas today, at least in something like America, right, we are doing abortion by their choice.
Actually,
their choice.
I think what's being suggested here is while if you can tell that it's a male child, even if it's just partially born, kill it before it's fully born. In other words, this is like a full-term abortion program that he's promoting here.
Yeah, this is after you give birth and
Well-
you know it's a boy, get rid of it. If it's a girl, keep it.
Well, what's funny is you almost see that same narrative being formulated now as we speak.
That's what I was
actually.
thinking.
It's generationally, we're coming to the place where feminism is basically saying men are the worst thing to exist.
Yeah.
And life would be better without
This-
them. And so it's
that's-
almost coming to that.
What I was thinking was that basically
We're just
they're doing it by
emasculating.
force. What's happening today is by deception. Abortion of killing off otherwise innocent people by means of deception is what's happening now. Whereas they tried to do force, all America's trying to do is say, hey, this is your choice to kill the evil men
You
instead of
should do it, but it's your choice.
yeah,
You
exactly.
should
Like,
do it.
the whole you get to choose what happens to your body is just
One
It's
point I want to
easy.
make,
deception.
not everybody was privy to a midwife. I'm sure that the mothers or the grandmothers were there birthing these children. And, it went through, they got by it.
Yeah, and of course, Goshen is a pretty big area there. They couldn't just hop in the minivan and run over to the.
Yeah, word
Yeah,
had
it's a-
spread that someone was delivering a baby.
So you had to get on the donkey, or may
Ride a
travel by
mile,
foot,
go talk to
may
somebody.
travel for a while. So by the time you get there, the delivery might be over.
The midwives for having the courage to speak up because they feared God, but they're talking to Pharaoh, so it's not like they're speaking to just some person next to them. This is the leader of Egypt, and they had the courage to say, "Look, we fear God, and your Egyptian women, they don't quite measure up to our Hebrew ones, because our Hebrew women are lively." So what she was saying is, yours aren't. So they had courage to be bold. You got to give them credit.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the other thing is the Egyptians, if they were in cities, they were in like urban areas where it might be easier to get to a woman that's gone into labor. Whereas if you're in a rural area, you've got some distance to cover. And so by the time you get there, it may be all over. And like Elijah's saying, the relatives, the grandmother and the,
Debbie.
whatever.
Yeah,
Oh,
Debbie
Debbie said,
said
yeah,
that.
okay. So very good points there. So God dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and waxed very mighty. So the whole scheme is kind of backfired on Pharaoh to a certain extent.
Yeah, he's facilitated their greater growth.
Right, right.
He
So-
sped up their multiplication.
Right, and yeah, so Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, "Every son that is born ye shall cast into the river, and every daughter ye shall save alive."
And the one before that was kind of interesting too. And it came to pass because the midwives feared God that he gave them houses.
Right,
It's like, what does that mean? Like this,
prosperity. He prospered them.
right?
Yeah.
Well, they were obviously doing pretty good business if the people were just multiplying like crazy. So,
Well, too, when they said they had to throw them in the river,
uh,
this was actually a sacrifice. They worshiped the alligator,
Right.
and the Nile
Yeah.
was full of alligators. So they were basically telling them, throw the baby boys into the river, offer them to
It
the
also makes
alligator
me
gods.
think
It was a common thing in their culture to
Well,
do
that their tax now became their children, essentially, to live in their nation. So he was trying to also not only take their land and obviously take the stuff from them, but he's also trying to take their, I guess, allegiance from God to their alligator
their
god.
gods.
And see, I think that was even a bigger point than one that your mom was bringing up there. I think that was a bigger point than.
Might have been the cover they used for doing this.
Yeah, but I mean.
They had to have a
but-
story to make it.
Right, but just think about it, in Egypt, like I said, you worship the river, you worship the alligator in the river. Oh, we're going to make a sacrifice to our God. And it's going to be, you know, from the Hebrew children that don't believe the same thing that we believe.
What I'm wondering is,
So
at
with-
this point, are they literally not able to leave, or, you know, do they not want to? Because you were saying earlier that you think the idea was initially just to pressure them to want to leave because, you know,
That's what
Something
I think.
like
I think individually they were always free to leave,
yeah,
but they were all.
right.
Well, also they were promised that land.
They
There's-
weren't alligators.
like
they were
they're
Back in Canaan, not in
crocodiles.
Egypt.
That's true.
Oh, sorry, what was that?
I says they weren't alligators, they were Nile crocodiles.
Crocodiles. Thank you for that.
Pretty sure there's some
Clarification.
poetry that makes
There's
that
probably like,
possible.
there's probably like 100 people
Definitely
out
good
there
rhyme.
saying, there aren't any alligators.
Yes.
There aren't any alligators in Egypt.
Didn't they worship the gator god?
What's easy to remember because Nile runs with crocodile and it's in the Gaither music.
Yeah,
The dial dive.
they were just full of croc.
Actually, the Nile crocodiles are very more aggressive than the alligators and bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
thanks,
so-
Deb, for clarifying. Yeah, we probably would have got 100 emails.
Just give me the point of interest, that's all.
Nice, nice. That's the way we like it. So. Okay, so the story picks up in chapter 2. We've got about what, 5, 6
10
minutes?
minutes.
10 minutes. Okay, so there went out a man of the house of Levi, and he took a wife, a daughter of Levi, which makes perfect sense. And
Do what?
Sure.
and the woman conceived and bare a son. When she saw him that he was a goodly child, she hid him 3 months. So,
Brave thing to do in that culture.
yeah, because
How
obviously,
could you hide a baby for 3 months? That's pretty hard.
well, they sleep a lot the first couple of months.
Right. So you just keep them nursing.
Yeah, try to keep them quiet, try to keep and he I mean, it's a tough thing to do, and of course it only lasted for 3 months, and when she could not when she could no longer hide him.
An interesting
Covered by 3 months.
Yeah,
One interesting
right.
consideration too is that if they kept up with the custom of circumcision, well, was that after they left Egypt? Was that kind of the thing, or did you
I think
they
it's more of an
actually
after
kept up with
thing. I think it's something that Moses.
Day.
Right. Well, I'm just
Yeah.
thinking like they even had to have, if they kept up with the practice, they would have had to have had a secret circumcision. You know, have the moil come out and do his thing.
Right. Okay, so when she could no longer hide him, she took him an ark of bulrushes and daubed it with slime and with pitch, put the child therein, and she laid it in the flags by the river's bank. So she makes a basket, waterproofs it, puts it into the so the river's edge.
She put the baby boy into the river.
Right.
She did.
That's what Jews make the best lawyers, I tell you what.
Right.
Your Honor, I did put the baby in the Nile. That's what you said to do.
Just put him in a basket in the Nile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And his sister, that would have been Miriam, stood soon afar off to watch, to wit what would be done to him.
She was the babysitter.
Yeah, she was the overseer there. The daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river. Because that seems to me like,
Well, they were already kind of near the
Didn't-
palace.
didn't they
where
have-
They were.
yeah, didn't they
I
have?
suspect that they knew where the princess came to bathe.
You think they did it intentionally to try to gain sympathy or what?
Well, as I understood the story, she didn't have any children. There were no heirs at the time. So for her to be the princess, the daughter of Pharaoh, and the Pharaoh doesn't have any male heirs, she would be eager to have a male heir.
I don't know, the baby.
Yeah, probably all those maternal things were kicking into gear there.
Would you not be afraid of the crocodiles?
Yeah, I guess she would have a whole entourage.
Private spot that's kind of like
Oh, yeah,
off
right.
and kind of guarded, or
Yeah, I think in Patriarchs and Prophets too, it says that angels were kind of protecting the child as this whole thing is playing out here. So the daughter of Pharaoh comes down to wash herself to the river, and her maidens walked along the river's edge or side. And when she saw the ark among the flags, or the bulrushes there. She sent her maid to fetch it. And when she had opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the babe wept. And she had compassion on him and said, "This is one of the Hebrews' children." Then said the sister to Pharaoh's daughter, then said his sister to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go?" She apparently ran down to see what they were going to do with the child. And this is kind of intuitive. I mean, Miriam was how much older than Moses? She was like, wasn't she like 6 or 7 at the time?
I don't know if we're ever given her age, are we? I mean, she's obviously old enough to be babysitting, so
Yeah, I think she was still relatively young, 6 or 7
Yeah,
years old.
probably. I mean, I would almost think maybe 6 to 8, something like that at least.
Yeah.
I'm sure
So-
they put kids to work pretty early with as slaves too.
But I mean, she had the wherewithal to suggest, "Shall I go and call thee a nurse of the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for thee?" So
Probably some divine inspiration in that situation too, I'm sure.
yeah. So Pharaoh's
Just a very smart kid.
Yeah, so Pharaoh's daughter said, "Go." And the maid went and called the child's mother. And then this is the great. This
Mom,
is
I got you a job.
Yeah, Mom, I got a job for you.
What's the job? Oh, you got to take care of yourself.
Yeah, isn't that great?
Uh,
It's almost like God really has a sense of humor here. And Pharaoh's daughter said unto her, "Take this child away, nurse it for me, and I will give thee wages." And the woman took the child and nursed it.
Got paid to raise her own kid.
The child grew, and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she called his name Moses, for she said, "Because I drew him out of the water." And how old do you think he was when that happened?
at least 3 months old.
No, I mean, okay, well, that's when the event happened, but
What?
when did he go to become Pharaoh's daughter? I mean, when did he become
When he was
Pharaoh's
like
son?
basically adopted in,
Yeah, when was he adopted into the palace?
I would think probably by age 4 or 5.
12.
12?
Well,
They wait that long?
he waited that long.
I think there was like an education process they had to go through or something, but
I mean, he probably was being educated through the mother, like through like a means of.
well, I mean, if he's going to be Egyptian royalty, it just
Right.
seems odd that they would leave him with
That-
the Hebrews for that long.
Right. Now, of course, when you read the commentary on Patriarchs and Prophets, it really highlights this point a lot. In fact, I'm gonna go over here in the last couple of minutes and actually read this chapter. And Mom doesn't like me doing that anyway.
Especially if you didn't have it already open.
Yeah, I'm not sure why it was turned off. I think I had it open.
Oh, it's just a screensaver, guys.
Right. Okay, says here, this is, I think it's Jochebed was Moses' mom or something.
Sounds familiar.
Okay, so she kept the boy as long as she could, but was obliged to give him up when he was about 12 years old. From his humble cabin home, he was taken to the royal palace to the daughter of Pharaoh, and he became her son. Yet even here, he did not lose the impressions received in childhood. The lessons learned at his mother's side could not be forgotten. They were a shield from the pride, the infidelity, the vice that flourished amid the splendor of the court. Okay. Now, this is the one I wanted to really share with you. This is how far-reaching in its results was the influence of that one Hebrew woman. And she was in exile and a slave. Okay. And just think, this woman was responsible for planting the seeds of truth in her son, and she had him for the first basically 12 years of his life. It says the whole future life of Moses, the great mission which he fulfilled as the leader of Israel, testifies to the importance of the work of the Christian mother. There's no other work that can equal this. To a very great extent, the mother holds in her own hands the destiny of her children. It's amazing. She is dealing with developing minds and characters. working not alone for time, but for eternity. She is sowing seed that will spring up and bear fruit, either for good or for evil. She has not to paint a form of beauty upon canvas or to chisel it from marble, but to impress upon the human soul the image of the divine. This is the character development we were talking about earlier. Especially during their early years, the responsibility rests upon her of forming the character of her children. The impressions now made upon their developing minds will remain with them all through life. Parents should direct the instruction and training of their children while very young, to the end that they may be Christians. They are placed in our care to be trained, not as heirs to this throne of an earthly empire, but as kings unto God to reign through unending ages.
And also, if he was at the age of 12 when he was given away, it means that he basically would have become a man, essentially, in the Israelites at that time too.
Exactly.
So
He
he
would
would
have had his bar mitzvah and then been sent along.
yeah.
Okay, so I just wanted to highlight that as we close this session here, how important it is. A mom's work is of just unbelievable importance when it comes to not only this life and the choices and so forth,
But the generational impact she had
but
on
for eternity. For eternity. I mean, Moses obviously grew up and had to make his own choices and decisions, right?
Mhm.
And he was confronted at a certain point with, do I become Pharaoh and rule a nation, a mighty nation, or do I go back with my own people and
become a ruler of a mighty nation.
and find out where God is going to take us? Well, yeah,
Option A, ruler of a mighty nation. Option B, ruler of a mighty nation.
Yeah.
yeah, but it didn't look that way.
Right.
Yeah.
You have
Right.
one that's already established
One that's already
with all the frills and all the bling, right?
Trappings and-
All the trappings and the bling. And then you have over here, I mean, this was almost like the same test that Christ had when he was in the wilderness.
I will give you all the nations of the world.
Just bow down to me and Satan
That's
shows
an
him a
obvious
panoramic,
parallel right there, for
you know,
sure. Because
absolutely.
that would have been what he would have been receiving as someone ruling Egypt.
Absolutely.
You know, he would have been given the kingdoms of the world.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, so we're going to cut it off right there.
And
We're-
another backstory before you cut
Right.
me off. Is he came in at age 12, not because he was a suckling child until he was 12 years old with a full set of teeth.
Yeah, I was wondering if someone was going to bring that up. But anyway,
Yeah,
And-
it was because the senior pharaoh who ruled south, upriver of the Nile, down in Thebes, he was Ahmose. He was the pharaoh Ahmose. He was the evil pharaoh who was making this directive, this order to kill all the young male children. But the pharaoh who had the daughter that drew Moses out of the water was the vice pharaoh at the time. He was like the vice president of the country.
So
He was
wasn't in charge.
overall charge. So he couldn't bring Moses into his household while Ahmose, the main pharaoh in Thebes, was still in charge, was still ruling the country. But
Okay.
when he took over the overall reign, then he brought Moses into his house. And he was Amenhotep as he ruled. He was Amenhotep the first. But then when he became the main pharaoh after his Ahmose died, then he became Thutmose the first.
Right.
And
that's
his
true.
name changed because he had a name change when he became the prime ruler rather than the vice ruler. And then that's when he brought Moses into his household at age 12.
Hmm.
And-
Wow. Well, the timing
anyway,
also worked out.
that's all in Mary Nell Wyatt Lee's book, Battle for the Firstborn.
right, right.
Battle for the first.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you don't have a copy yet, get your copy.
We've got some here.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks for sharing that little bit. That's a little bit of the backstory, because obviously all of that provided Moses's mom to really, and she really kicked it in when she was hired by the princess when she was hired by the princess to kind of raise her son, she didn't know obviously how long that was going to be. And so she steadfastly put into high gear the planting of the seeds of truth that would give her son the best chance to make the right choices and decisions. And yeah, she was steadfast in that, which really you have to really say she was responsible for what Moses would later become and do and accomplish for God. She was really the one that laid all that foundation for him. So praise
Well,
God for that. Praise God for mothers.
It's
Go ahead.
interesting about the age of 12, is kind of considered the age of accountability. And just like the Jews today, they have the bar mitzvah of their male children once they turn 12. So it's interesting that Moses was also 12 when he basically came into the household of Pharaoh. In the age of accountability and became transitioning into adulthood as a male child.
Of course, how old was Jesus when he went to the temple?
Well,
Yeah, well, also. So
Yeah, makes sense.
yeah. Okay, well, we'll let Elijah close us out in prayer for this session. Get on with the rest of our day.
All right. Father, we thank you for this beautiful day and all the wonderful things that you've done for us. Thank you for your word and all the things that you've put there for us to find. We ask that in coming weeks, you would help us to think about these things and that you would open our minds to understanding them more clearly. Thank you for all that you do and for all that you bless us with. And we can't thank you enough for everything that you do. And now be with us now for the rest of the Sabbath and help us to enjoy all the wonderful things you have made. These things we ask and pray in the name of your Son. Amen.
Amen. Well, thanks everyone for your comments and thoughts, and thanks for having the courage to share them with us. We enjoy that so much. Just pray that you'll be blessed beyond measure, and that we'll catch up with you again next time.
Happy Sabbath, everyone.
Happy Saturday.
okay, yeah. Oh, one other thing, if you think about it, now I'm going to do a presentation on the discoveries to a small church this coming Friday night. So
Nice.
Oh, nice.
if you think about it in your prayers, remember me, and I'm kind of revamping my PowerPoint presentation a little bit and adding some new stuff that was just recently discovered and within the last year, about last December. Down at Mount Sinai. Have you caught wind of that yet? The kilns and the molds.
Yeah.
Where they made
Made the furniture or the stuff.
where they hammered the gold into the wings of the cherub for the mercy seat and all that stuff. The mold for that.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean,
You said they were
Seen it.
discovered on the mountain?
around the base.
Yeah,
somewhere.
discovered at the base of the mountain,
Oh,
not too far from the gold calf altar.
wow. Yeah, interesting.
Makes sense. Keep the
Yeah.
smelting operations close.
Yeah,
Very cool. So
so
do you have pictures?
Lord willing, yeah, I have some pictures. And you can find a little video presentation on it that Randall recorded. This guy that was part of that tour group that happened to stumble onto this site found, and he has a little presentation that Randall filmed as he did it at their house, and I think it's on the Ron Wyatt YouTube channel, I believe. If not, I
Sounds
can
good.
send you a link to it, and
Yeah, sounds great,
it'll give
man.
you it'll give you all the information.
Well, I'm sure those folks will be blessed beyond measure.
And Lord willing, I'm going to be going back there in late October for the first time in over 5.5 years since I was in Saudi last.
Oh, wow, that's really cool.
So who's
2018. So
going over
go
then?
see that stuff in person.
Who's going over then?
Actually, Randall, Mary Nell is going to go for the first time,
Hmm.
her first time to Saudi, and yeah, Dennis and Michelle, and also let's see, Jim. I can't remember his last name. He's the guy that was on the tour group that stumbled onto this new info about the kilns, and then let's see, Vivica is going to go, Pontien. Yeah, and Eric Lemke. So, yeah, there's going to be 8 of us.
Wow.
So,
Sounds good.
but yeah, I'll keep you up to date on all that and let you know what we find over there besides what's already been found. If we find anything else.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
So yeah, I'm excited to go back. Haven't been there, like I said, about 5.5 years. So
That'd be quite the trip.
Yeah, sounds great.
yes.
Okay, guys. Well, have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. And you guys too.
You too. Have a good week, guys.
All right. You
God
too.
bless.